Welcome to Dr. Green Speaks.
What's up, family? You know who I be. It's the kid again, Dr. Green. Yeah, you heard it. Listen.
Bridging the gap between scholars.
Read more books than the curriculum profile.
Doctors, athletes,
Let's go.
and pop culture influencers.
Major show alert.
Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. And now, Dr. Green Speaks.
Bring them out.
What's up, family? You know who it is. Kid again, Dr. Green. Yep, listen, back here on Dr. Green Speaks today, I have the opportunity to share time with none other than the Dr. Avery August, who happens to be a professor of microbiology and immunology. Given the time that we're in right now, dealing with COVID, this is the kind of individual that you should be reaching out to get the real information, the facts, the peer-reviewed research. He's an expert that studies inflammation, lung inflammation specifically, and disease. It is my pleasure to introduce none other than my man's in them, Dr. Avery August. How you doing today, family?
I'm doing well, Dr. Green. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great. I mean, this is an honor and a privilege. I'm very excited about getting into this conversation about you, your work, your achievements. I mean, I think this is one of my favorite opportunities because you're in a discipline that I know absolutely nothing about. So I'm looking forward to learning and to sharing all of the wonderful things that you are involved in. So why don't you tell me where did it start? Where does your story start?
Where did I start? It's interesting. I was, so I was born in Belize, in Central America, and my mother moved here to the U.S. When I was very young, and we came after to Los Angeles. So spent some time in Los Angeles. Did a year of high school there, community college. Couple of years of community college, transferred to Cal State LA, big up Cal State LA, and was kind of struggling, as you do. Took a class, and one of my professors, Professor Costello Brown, still remember, I was taking his class, and he said, "What do you want to do with your life?" And at the time, my major was medical technology, and I was it's the type of job where you do the blood tests in the hospital and stuff like that. And he says, "Do you want to do urine analysis for the rest of your life?" And I thought about it. And it's like, I never thought about it that way. So it's like, come on, let me show you what research is like. So he introduced me to research, and I never looked back. Because I really, fell in love with just discovery.
Wow. No, that's amazing because a lot of young people that are going into college operate under the misnomer that they have to know exactly what it is that they're going to do for their, for the rest of their life. And some of them assume that major that they picked when they started is what they're going to do for the rest of their lives. How was that shift for you to go from this idea of, this is what I might do, to finding that thing that really motivated you and inspired you?
Yeah, no, that was definitely a journey for me because I started out as a biology major. And, I started as a biology major because I thought, okay, I'm going to go to medical school. That's what biology majors do. I like biology. But then I didn't really like hospitals. I mean, not in that way, right? I mean, I really respect, but for me, it was just something that I, realized didn't want to spend the rest of my life there. And so that's when I was struggling. And so I changed to microbiology. And then, I thought, well, how can I get a job with a degree in microbiology? So then I changed to medical technology because I figured, okay, I can get a job. I can point to a job there. But then that's when, Dr. Brown said to me, and I really respect it. We've chatted about this a number of times over the years, what do you want to do? And that's when it clicked, right? Because that's when I really saw that I could do this, and I really enjoyed it. And he introduced me to this whole world of what you could do. You could get a Ph.D., you could do all this stuff. And I didn't know all that before. So it's, if you don't know what you don't know, right? And it's people like Dr. Brown who can start to open those doors for you.
Wow. So can you tell me a little bit about what you do now?
So what do I do now in research?
Yes.
I'm an immunologist. What that means is I study how the immune system works. And a lot of people have been talking about vaccines, COVID. So that's right up my alley. As a matter of fact, my lab, some of the work that we do in my lab, we're working with some of my colleagues on trying to understand how the virus triggers the immune system, and thinking about how it causes disease. I study lung inflammation. Everybody hears about inflammation. So when you get a flu, when you get infected with SARS-CoV-2, that causes lung inflammation. When you have asthma, COPD, all of those things cause lung inflammation. It's basically the same process. And we're trying to understand, how does the immune system know to turn on this process of inflammation? And then how does it know to turn it off? Because when you clear the virus, if you have flu, you clear the virus. If you have SARS-CoV-2, you clear the virus. That's the immune system turning on and turning off. So we're trying to understand how the immune system turns on and then how to turn it off, so that we can try to manipulate it, when we want. So that's sort of what we do in the lab.
So the ability to turn it on and turn it off at will, so to speak, or to be able to control that, how is that beneficial? And what's the application of that?
That's beneficial because, when you get infected, I'm going to use SARS, the COVID-2, just because, that's what we've been talking about, but it's the same process. When you get infected with this virus, the immune system needs to clear the virus, right? So it needs to sort of send the alarm, turn on inflammation, and inflammation is what drives that. But that inflammation can damage the lung. It's a similar process as when you have asthma. The inflammation damages the lung, COPD damages the lung. So you want to be able to control that. You don't want it to be too high, but just enough so you clear the virus. So if you're able to control that, you can say, turn it on just this amount, clear the virus, and then turn it off, right? And then there are times when you have inflammation. If you have asthma, you have COPD, you have inflammation that you don't want. So you want to be able to shut that down, right? So you want to be able to control that in a way such that you can control the levels, depending on the type of disease, depending on the situation. Sometimes inflammation is good. You need the inflammation to clear the virus. Sometimes it's bad. You need to turn it off, or you need to sort of block, the symptoms that you have of asthma or COPD. So, having a really good understanding of that, it's like learning the rules of the road, right? If you cross the road over here, you're going to run into traffic. So if you understand it, you can control your driving, right? Or driving a car or something, like the gas, the brake. You got to be able to control that. So that's the thing that we try to understand.
Wow, that's amazing. And that's so very important. So I would just want to ask you a question. So I think one of the things that I've talked about quite a bit is what I refer to as anti-intellectualism, right? So we live in a day where everybody's on the internet, right? Everybody has an opinion, right? Everybody's an expert on what I Googled it, and I found out, right? So can you tell me, have you felt any frustration as it relates to the flow of information or misinformation on the internet? Because you are one of those experts that people should be talking to directly or listening to, but they're waiting and listening or paying attention to the newest pop star to tell them what they should believe or not believe. Is that a challenge for you when you see kind of the information that's out there and the way that discussions are being had?
Oh man, you're touching a nerve here.
Edit.
The joke is, everybody's a virologist or everybody's immunologist on the internet, right? Everybody's doing their research. And I'm saying, unless you have a lab and you have people and you understand what this means, you're not doing research. You're just reading what's on the internet. And not everything on the internet is true.
Right.
So definitely, it's one of those things, and particularly for, parts of the Black community, right? I mean, we need to be able to trust the people who have authority and are speaking, and there's a history that's there. Right. So it's not that I'm not arguing against that, but we need to be able to understand that there are experts who have expertise, who know what they're talking, who do the research. People like myself and others who are able to speak authoritatively on these issues. And not everything you see on the internet, not everyone who speaks on this issue is able to tell you the difference between a T cell and a virus. And And so if they're talking about, vaccines and they don't have that expertise, then I don't know if I trust them. Just like I'm not going to call on any particular person, but I'm not in your kitchen telling you how to cook, right? So
right, right. No, that because that's very frustrating. Because, like you said, there is a history in our community as it relates to medical treatment and medical mistreatment, right? So there is that justifiable questioning, so to speak. But I think it's just gotten to the point where everybody is talking authoritatively about this subject matter. And one of the things that I bring, it's a I guess a cartoon or something where I think it was called The Incredibles, where the bad guy was his objective was to make everybody a superhero, right? So if everybody's a superhero, then nobody would be, right? And by the same token, if everyone is purported to be an expert, like if everybody takes that positionality, well, I know, then no one knows, because there's so many talking heads that we get lost in the shuffle and say, well, this person said that and this person said the other. So having people like you that are out there, that are in the trenches, that are doing the work, I think we have to do a better job of making sure that your voices are heard above the noise, so that we'll have the kind of information that'll help us to make educated decisions. So you are at Cornell, the Vice Provost of Academic Affairs. How is it being as a person of color, right, in a position of a very prestigious, historically white institution?
Yeah, no, this is interesting, and I have students come to me, on the side, show up at my office and trying to understand, the institution, trying to understand, these are really complex institutions and cultures, and one of the things that I always think about is, can I be in the room where decisions are made, where there's a voice that comes from our community. And, that's part of what has driven me as I've thought about, what am I going to do next, is are there places that I can be where I can start to think about changing some of the structures, some of the processes to make this more transparent so that more people can be successful. And, this sort of position that I have it's kind of vague, Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, it's sort of, academic affairs, right? It's an academic institution. But, one of the things about that is that it allows me to be able to collaborate with different parts of the university in understanding, what we do as a university. So, the process of who do we hire, the faculty, how do we ensure that those faculty are able to provide the support for the students that we have at our institution as Cornell gets, our undergraduate population gets more and more diverse. We don't have the same diversity among our faculty. So that's one of the things that I think about and try to do, and try to ensure that we have a more diverse faculty who can teach our students. So, there's a wide range of things that I do in my position, but the big one that I think about is, can I be in those rooms where I can at least have a voice in some of those decisions that are being made?
Right. Well, so do you feel a lot of pressure being in those rooms? Because a lot of the Black intellectuals and practitioners and experts tend to be in rooms that they are the one of one. And so they end up not just being an expert in a particular area or in their particular area of expertise, they are by default a representative of so much more. Do you feel that when you enter these spaces and are asked these questions?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, and you just described the position that some of us are in. We, on the one hand, I'm a member of the community. We have, we hang out together. We're doing lunch. We're sort of, I'm there as an individual, as a Black male. But then I show up in those rooms and I have to say, look, I'm an N of one. I don't, I am not the full diversity of the experience that you're asking. I can tell you what I try to consult my colleagues and try to say, what are you thinking? Because I don't have every experience that my Black colleagues have on the campus. But it is quite a bit of pressure because, sort of you see the heads look at you, right? And you're like, okay,
The whole room.
what do you think? I don't know. What do you think?
So tell me about.
Definitely pressure.
Oh, my apologies. So tell me a little bit about your journey, right? So you're in your undergrad program, right? Tell me about the trajectory from undergrad to where you are now academically.
So undergrad, I told you the story about Dr. Brown, and the reason I keep shouting him out because he, as I said, he was pivotal. And I ended up not doing research with him. He introduced me to one of his colleagues, Dr. Ph.D. And so I did research with her in her chemistry lab. So I did a couple of years of research in chemistry. She really introduced me to the concept of going to grad school. And I decided I wanted to do immunology because I'd taken a course as part of my undergraduate degree in immunology. And I was just fascinated with the immune system. Lots of parallels with the immune system and life. The immune system exists in a state where it can recognize anything before you even come in contact with it. And part of that state is because of the diversity of the immune system, the representation of all different types of immune cells that pre-exist and are ready to go, just waiting until it recognizes something. And so I really appreciated that. So I finished my degree. I spent a year at Cal State LA doing a master's degree in biochemistry while I was applying to grad school, and thinking about different grad schools. Finally ended up being accepted at Cornell's grad school in New York City, Graduate School of Medical Sciences, and I decided to go to grad school there. So I moved to New York City from California, and spent 5 years in grad school there. I won't say it was easy. Getting a PhD is hard. There were times when I really, didn't feel like staying. I wanted to leave, but I always remembered, my mother came here and she made some sacrifices to be able to have us be able to have access to the types of educational systems we have here. And so that kept me going. And after I finished my PhD, I started, thinking about what next. Decided to do a postdoc, which is this 2 or 3 year period after you do your PhD at Rockefeller University in New York City. I know you're a Brooklyn man. Upper East Side. But I always went over to, just as an aside, I always went over to Brooklyn to get my foods.
Absolutely.
And then, after I finished my PhD, I went to Penn State because it was an interesting opportunity. I really enjoy working with students, really enjoy being in the classroom, but also doing research. And so that the offer that they made to me as an assistant professor gave me the opportunity to do both of that. And so that's when I started my academic journey in real life. In between, there were lots of opportunities lots of times when I thought, okay, I'm not sure if I want to do this. Fortunately, nobody else gave me a job. So I tried to be a high school teacher. I tried to, do other things, but didn't get a job. So I ended up, being an academic.
That sounds like a great default.
Yeah, I know it's been good. I have to say it's been good. So I'm not upset.
Okay, I want to shout out a person very dear to me, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, who is the new head of the College of Ethnic Studies at Cal State Los Angeles. So she's there in your town,
Yes.
trying to make a difference. So I wanted to just shout her out. So here's what I'd like to kind of get to. A lot of young people want to go to Cornell, right? It's one of those institutions that people tout as the top in the world. What advice would you give undergrads that maybe they're in their junior year, right, of high school, or this? What does it take to become a Cornell student?
Oof. Yeah, that's a
Loaded.
It's a definitely loaded. I mean, I'll say the undergrads here, I mean, fantastic students here. And, even when I was at Penn State, really great students. One of the, I'm going to preface what I'm saying before I answer your question with this, because it's sometimes a struggle for students. All the students at Cornell, undergrad students at Cornell, were at the top of their class in whatever high school they were in. And then they come here and everybody was at the top of their class. And now they're just one of, whatever number of students. And that can be a struggle, right? And so and when I talk to students, I think that's one of the things that ends up happening. So, students who Cornell has a really interesting, I'm going to give some detail here because I think it's important for high school students who are interested in going to Cornell. Cornell has an admissions process where you apply to a particular college or a major. So many other universities, you apply to the university, you indicate your major, and then they make a choice. Here, each college does their own admissions. So, for example, if you're interested in biology, you can get access. You apply to either the College of Agricultural Life Sciences or the College of Arts and Sciences. They both have the same degree. And you indicate that you're interested in biology. And the big thing is they want to know why Cornell is best for you as compared to any other university. So it's not just you apply, you use the same application materials that you apply to everywhere else. You go to the website, you look at what Cornell offers, you look at the faculty, you look at the programs, and you say, Cornell is the place for me because I see myself at Cornell because Cornell has this, and Cornell has this population of students, and Cornell has these programs. They want to know that you are interested in Cornell for what Cornell uniquely can offer. And similarly, Cornell is looking at you as an applicant to see, can we see you as part of our undergraduate student body? Do we see you as someone who can benefit from what Cornell has to offer? Do you have interests that we see that you can carry out here? So clearly grades are important, right? So I'm not even talking about grades. As I said, most of the students at Cornell, they're at the top of their class. But are you doing something that you can see yourself benefiting from when you go to Cornell, and how does Cornell help you reach your goal? And there are other majors that might be related to your major, so you can look around. There's a biology and society major. If you're interested in biology, you can also do biology and society. It's a different college. So if you explore the different majors, there are ways of applying to Cornell that you can express your unique identity in improving your chances of getting it as an undergrad.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So obviously we touched on this before, but do you find that a lot of the students of color come to you specifically, right? Because again, you're one, right? And do you find that you're that focal point of access for support or information?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really struggle with is being able to find the time, frankly, to talk to all the students who reach out. Definitely, students show up at my office, want to chat. They will say, I heard about you because you're part of some organization, or my parents told me about you, and they're looking for someone who, frankly, looks like them, who's in this institution, who can sort of talk a bit about what it feels like to be in that space. So students reach out to me by email, they'll show up at my office. And, as I've done more of my administrative work, I've had less time to do that. And so I try to find different ways, after hours or weekends where I'll chat with students. So it's definitely, one of the things that, people tell you when you're in this space and you're one of a few. You work harder. There are 24 hours in the day, right? Some of my colleagues can focus their time, but I feel I have a duty to be talking to those students when they reach out and to have those conversations.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So, Dr. August, can you tell us about one of the challenges, and I'm sure there were many, right? That one of the challenges that you were able to overcome that you thought you might not overcome?
Yeah, there's definitely a number of them. But maybe I'll talk about the PhD program. As I said earlier, it's not easy to get a PhD. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I think it's worth it. I think it's satisfying once you go through that. but it's so different from when you're an undergrad or any other type of educational process. If you're getting a master's degree, you know what courses you're going to take. You take your courses, you graduate. When you're getting a PhD, you have to discover new knowledge.
Talk about it.
You have to discover new knowledge, and so that what that means, you have to know the limits of what exists, what the limits of what knowledge exists, right? So there's a lot of sort of sitting in the library, reading, catching up, and then you have to take these tests. I mean, you know this, Dr. Green.
Comps. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
You have to take these tests, and you have to get through the test. And I'll tell you, I wasn't sure I would make it. When you're being grilled by those professors, you reach the limits of your knowledge, and you're like, I don't know anything. And you walk out of those rooms and you feel like you don't know anything. But, that's part of the process of learning where the limits of knowledge is. And that's when you start to say, okay, this area is completely unknown, and I have an interest, and I can start to explore that.
Right.
But there was that period of time, 2 to 3 years into the PhD, man, I'll tell you, I was like, I don't know if I can do this.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, because I had the same challenge, and I think this is really important, right? Because, not everyone, a lot of people talk, I was going to get a PhD. Like, it's something that you can go to Walmart and pick up off the shelf. Like, I'll take a master's and a PhD. And a lot of young people don't understand that that thing is no joke. And one of the things that I think we don't discuss, and I'll just share this from a personal story because I think it's important. You have your comps. Like you have to pass these exams. And the comps I had to take were ridiculous. CUNY grads and y'all just, whew. And so the difficulty associated, first of all, with, like you said, understand that you have to know the canon. You've got to know what's out there first before you formulate ideas about what you might want to do, right? The gap in the literature or the gap in the research. So the kind of commitment and difficulties that you go through, the questioning of your, like you said, the limit of your ability, where you're looking and you're saying, I really don't know this, right? And obviously I went back and did well the next time, but that was an ugly moment, and you really question whether you're cut out to get that degree that they say, less 2% of the population have. So, that is, whew, yeah. And so I think it adds to the frustration of experts like yourself that know your area. Like, you've done the due diligence, the blood, sweat, tears, right?
Yeah.
And then you got someone else saying, I think so and so and so and so, and they talk about it so authoritatively, and you're looking like, what did you say?
Yeah. I didn't just wake up this morning and go to Google and say, okay, I'm gonna read a few lines of immunology and start to speak on this.
No, I love when they say, well, I did some research. No, that's not typing that little line in the Google space. That's not research. No, that's amazing. So now you're the chair or part of a committee for a conference, right? Well, can we talk about that for a minute?
So I'm really this is the thing that I'm really proud of. This is a conference called ABRCAMS. It's Annual Biomedical Research Conference for Minority Students. We're just changing the name to Annual Research Conference for Minority Scientists, because we really are all scientists. And it is the largest undergraduate research conference for students. It's usually fall. It's held every fall. And over 5,000 attendees, students from all over the country. And it's the one place where if you are a student of color, and you might be the only one or one of a few in your university or when you go to your disciplinary meeting, but when you show up to ABRCAMS, everybody looks like you. And you walk into that room and it's like the energy is just there. People are excited to be there. People are excited to be among their own community. And so it's a place where, we mentor students. We have, people from all careers who are there to either be mentored or mentor themselves. And so it's really exciting. I really love that meeting.
That's awesome. And so where can they get information about this conference?
So it's ABRCAMS, ABRMCS.org, ABRCAMS.org, or use Google, and just type in Abercrombs, and that will give you the link.
Do the research. Go to Google and do that deep research. No, that's incredible, and obviously that's something you're very proud of. Because I mean, this coming together. I mean, something that we've done with the Black Doctoral Network also, to create that synergy and that opportunity to be in spaces where you're looking at people that look like you, that have some of the same experiences, challenges, insecurities, right? And to be able to be in this place where you can really express yourself and feel at home, I think is really, really important. That's an incredible work that you're doing. Thank you so very much for it. Dr. August, can you also tell us about the its bridges to the doctorate? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that was thanks for the question. That was a program that I built when I was on the faculty at Penn State. And you were asking me earlier about my academic career, and one of the things that I've always tried to do is try to find opportunities to increase opportunities for people of color, students of color, Black students in particular, to get into STEM, get PhDs. And so when I was on the faculty at Penn State, looked around my department, saw there were, I was it, and trickle of students here and there. And so I thought, well, how can we try to get more students into Penn State? So I went around the country, and I used my own resources to do this. Went to UMBC, that has a fantastic program, a pipeline program for getting students into PhDs, Black students, other HBCUs, and talked to them about the type of students that were there. What is the structures? What are the challenges that these students face? And one of the things that I discovered that I knew speaking to our own students at Penn State and even here at Cornell is it's so different going from undergrad to PhD. I mean, we've talked about that, that challenge of being in the PhD program. But in addition to that, you're going from, an HBCU that has a particular culture to a predominantly white institution that has a very different culture. So many things that are different. And so that I thought it would be good to try to build a program that really addresses this cultural difference, this socialization difference that ended up happening for students who come from those places. So I ended up developing a really good collaboration with a couple of colleagues at Alcorn State in Mississippi, HBCU, very similar characteristics to Penn State, it's a land-grant institution. And so went out, wrote a grant, and got some funding from the National Institute of Health to build what's called the Bridges to the Doctorate program. And what that program did was we recruited students from Alcorn State into a master's program at Alcorn State. So they would finish their biology degree, they would enter a master's program at Alcorn State, but then they would spend a year at Penn State as part of that master's program. And in that year, they were able to learn about Penn State, learn about the institution, learn about the cultural and social differences, so that when they got accepted to the PhD eventually at Penn State, it wouldn't be so much of a shock. And so that program ran for about 8 or 10 years, I think. Even after I left, it continued until recently. And there are a number of students who went through that program that have been really successful. One of those students, I'm going to call her out, Dr. Melanie McReynolds, who's now on the faculty at Penn State, went through that Bridges program. There are other students, who graduated from the PhD program at Penn State, went back to Alcorn State as faculty. Other students, came to me with when I moved to Cornell in my lab and ended up having positions in industry. So I'm really proud of that, students, because it really started with this idea of trying to increase the number of Black students that we had at Penn State, going around, understanding the culture, understanding what are the differences, and trying to increase the belonging for those students when they got there.
Awesome. Wow. That is amazing. That is amazing. So, Dr. August, I've seen this hashtag, right? It seems to be very, very popular, Black and STEM, right? And I'd like for you to talk about what it's like to be a Black scientist or Black and STEM. Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see that hashtag, sort of trend over the last few years, and one of those things, being, we talked about this, this being in this space where you're one of a few or one of the only, and that comes with particular stereotypes, right? One is there's not an expectation that a scientist looks like you. So, there was this whole thing, and this is what a scientist looks like. We have these people who look very different from the traditional stereotypic view of what a scientist looks like. So, and I've certainly experienced that in my career, I have people showing up at the lab if they haven't done research and looked at what I look like on the internet. They'll show up and they'll think, somebody else is me because I'm sitting there, but they don't think that I'm the one, right? You don't look like a scientist. And so, there's that stereotype of what a scientist looks like. There's also, frankly, your own internal feelings about, we talked about going through the Ph.D., your own internal feelings about, can you make this? Can you make it through this, as a career? Because there aren't that many who've gone through this that's in a visible way been doing this. If you look around you, so you go to meetings, you're the only one, and so there's that internal feeling that you have as well about being Black in a space where that's not the expectation. But I also see it as a way to have access to our own community, right? I mean, we have now more and more people who look like me, who are doing this, who are being scientists, including one of the developers of the COVID vaccine, that's Akizmakia Corbett, that says, look, you can look like me and you can be a scientist. And so I think we just, one of the things I really want to do is have not even be an issue, right? The fact that you look at me shouldn't be a surprise that you're a scientist.
Dr. August, so there are some people like W.E.B. Du Bois that talks about double consciousness, the way that Black people see themselves through the eyes of other people. And sometimes that can be very debilitating, right? And challenging because you're not only fighting or working through how you see yourself, but the stereotypes and the perceptions of who you are as a Black individual. How have you been able to work through that challenge?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one of the things that I've certainly had conversations with some of my students about, when you look at around the room and you see yourself through those two lenses, that double conscious that you refer to, the way I've tried to do it is think about, who am I as a person? What are my interests? What it is that I want to do? And not try to think about how people are perceiving me or looking at me or, having particular expectations. Now, it's not to say that it doesn't influence. I mean, certainly, I can be in a room and say, if I say this thing, this is going to come off a particular way because of what people see me as. Mm-hmm. And so definitely have to think about that. But at the same time, I also go through this inner conversation about, but should I say this thing regardless of who people think I am or who people perceive I am? And so there's always that conversation that I have with myself about those things. And the more and more I do that, the more comfortable I get about allowing my individuality to come out, regardless of how people perceive me. But I can't tell you that it's always the case, right? I always have to think about what that, both plus and minus, I have to think about what that perception is like. It's like, if you're a Black man and you walk into the store, you keep your hands in your pockets so that people, the cameras don't think you're trying to steal something, right? You're almost self-censoring, even though you're not going to be doing that. Mm-hmm. So it's a continuous struggle, and it's trying to find that balance with yourself so that you feel comfortable about who you are and how you're walking through this world. That's not, influenced in such a way that you feel, constricted by where you are.
Right. That's incredible. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So one of the questions that I like to put out is, if you're talking to your younger self, right, you're here now, what advice would you give your younger self?
I would say, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. Because there are lots of times, where you're like, I don't know, is this going to work? Am I making the right decision here? And I've been thinking about this, and students ask me, how I got to do what I do and decisions and that sort of thing. And there are always these alternate universes of, had I made a different decision, right? If I hadn't gone to graduate school, if I hadn't gone to graduate school at Cornell, and so many different big decisions that you make that I don't know what would have happened the other side, but I know who I am. And so, in the end, I would tell my younger self that, think about it, make the decision, and then look forward, because you can't go back, but you can always go forward.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Dr. August, right now, there are young Black boys in Belize, in Los Angeles, in New York, who are facing very, very difficult challenges. If you could speak to them right now, what advice would you give them, given you've been in those spaces that they may be in at this point?
Yeah, this is the thing that I think about. One of my colleagues and I, a couple of my colleagues actually, and I have been looking at some of this issue around, who gets to join us, because we're in the academy, and one of the challenging things we see is a dearth of Black men as we look at the pipeline, and I think Black boys in particular face so much growing up in the society that we grow up with regards to what they look like and what people expect when they see a Black kid. We can talk about Trayvon, we can talk about others, and it's a challenge because we're just trying to live our lives, we're just trying to do what we do, and so I would say believe in yourself and don't think about, or don't try not to let what others think about you guide what you do and the decisions that you make. Get as much information as you can. We don't know what we don't know. And part of the thing about my journey is that I've had other Black men reach down to me, so to speak, and help me and open those doors for me and give me information that I didn't have. And so be open to that. Be open to people who are ahead of you. Talk to people who are ahead of you. Talk to people who are doing what you want to do and see how they got there. These are the things that I think can help you. And there's all this noise happening around you. You try to think about try not to think about that noise, and try to think about what it is that you want to do. How do you get there? What can you do now to get to where you want to be? And talk to those people who can help you do that. And they will tell you about people who can help you to do that, because we're all trying to make sure that more of us are in these spaces.
Thank you. And I'd just like to add to that to all of those boys from Belize to New York, there is a Dr. Avery August. There is a Dr. Maurice Green. There are so many of us that have made this journey. It is not impossible. It is actually very, very probable. If you just understand that it's possible, right? And that, being from Brooklyn, I like to just say that the world is so much bigger than that 4-block radius. Your hood, your neighborhood, your town. It's possible. Just know that you are not your environment, and you are not limited to your current experiences. That there are many of us that have taken that trip and we've come out on the other side okay. Dr. Avery August, thank you so very much for being gracious with your time, sharing your wisdom and your experiences. This is so important for us to be able to do, to show that Black excellence exists, and that the work that's being done is so important. And the work that you're doing, obviously, is so very important to not just to our community, to the world. Thank you so very much for your time, family.
Dr. Green, thank you for having me. We're here, we're always here, and we will be here.
Awesome. Thank you.